In a modern media environment in which international stories very rarely get the attention they deserve, over the past few months there has been a lot of coverage of the Boko Haram kidnappings of the Nigerian schoolgirls. But at the same time, oddly enough, another mass kidnapping was going on in a different part of the world, in North Syria. And up until now, it's gotten very little press coverage at all, but it's an absolutely tragic story. Basically, almost 200 Kurdish school children were traveling from their Kobani enclave to Aleppo to take a test. On the way back, their 10 minibuses were stopped by ISIS forces, and it was rerouted to one of their Islamic schools, and they're still being held. That happened back on the 30th of May, and so now a large period of time has passed. Only a few of the boys have managed to escape. Some of them climbed up onto the rooftop, were able to jump over the wall, and thanks to some of the people living in that area, they were able to get back to their families. And so because of that, we know a little bit about what's going on at that school, where almost 186 students are still being held. Here are a few quotes from one of the students named Mustafa Hassan, who was able to escape. He said, "They asked us whether we wanted to join jihadis or not, to join ISIS. No one did. If the students were loud or chaotic, they were beaten with an electrical cable. 10 boys were beaten every day. But most of us were well behaved to not get beaten. Some of the boys were crying, some turned yellow with fear. They showed us a documentary film from Iraq of people being slaughtered." They did have a few good things to say, though. Mustafa said the food was good. At breakfast, we had peas and sweet things. But he also identified that some of the ISIS fighters who were holding those school children were Russians, Chechens, Libyans, some Saudi Arabians, and Syrians as well. So an international force operating in that part of Syria. We have a little bit more details, some quotes from some of the fathers, but it's pretty amazing that, I guess it's just a testament to how chaotic things are in Syria right now, that a massive kidnapping like this, a coordinated kidnapping, could go on, and months could go by before anyone knows about it.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of story deserves the type of media attention that Boko Haram got, right? And it hasn't really gotten that attention, aside from the article that was written by The Guardian. But another thing is, and you know, Ben and I talked about this yesterday, it's just another example of how brutal ISIS can be, and then they have this incredible strategy of seeming as though they're nice, open people that want to talk to the press, that want to grant interviews, that want to be active on social media. I mean, it's the two sides of ISIS.
Yeah, it's like, dear sir and madam, we've kidnapped your son, we're holding him for ransom, all the best, ISIS.
Well, it's, yeah.
I actually played the improv there in Boca Raton or whatever. That was nice. What was it? Have you been down there? It's nice, a little humid, but I love it.
Oh, Jimmy.
Oh, Boca Raton. I was in Boca Raton. It's a different place.
Yeah, so still almost 200 students being held in the town where many of them came from, in Kobani. They're talking to some of the parents of boys who are still being held. They say they don't know any parents who don't have someone who's been kidnapped. Misinformation has been disseminated throughout that community. Sometimes they think that the boys have been killed. Sometimes they're told that they're being released. But so far, only those first few boys were able to escape. Here's a quote from one of the fathers. He said, "I am in a bad situation, psychologically so bad and confused. My son doesn't just belong to us. He belongs to everyone in his city. He is not just a Kurd, he is a citizen of the world. My son is so thin, a weak boy. He is ill, you know." He goes on to say, "He can't eat wheat. He has to have a special diet. I worry that they might be brainwashed into jihad or carrying weapons. His brain is young and flexible. Maybe they can wash his mind." And obviously that is a serious concern, because that's how many of the child soldiers of Africa are taken. They're kidnapped from their families, and then they're held and brainwashed when they're still relatively able to be, I guess, corrupted by those soldiers. And so it's horrible. It's in Syria, though. We've already decided, at least on America's sake, that we're not going to be going in there.
So these kids were in, these are Syrian kids? These were Syrian Kurds?
It's not immediately clear there. They had traveled across that portion of North Syria.
So maybe they're Iraqi Kurds.
It's possible. Or even Turkish, yes. It's
It's just, you would think that that would be, you know, in all, as you read in all the stories about the Kurds trying to sort of fortify their defense against ISIS, and Joe Biden's original plan of the one he championed anyway, the tripartite solution, as the Kurds look for some degree of autonomy, and as a buffer between ISIS getting a border with a NATO country in Turkey. You would just imagine that the kidnapping of 186 sons would be the rallying cry to take the fight to ISIS.
You would think. What are freaking people? And there's not that many people in ISIS. Which, right? Am I wrong about this? Or just a few thousand people? that are.
I mean, it depends. ISIS is made up of groups now operating in multiple areas, both in Syria and Iraq. It does seem to be relatively well manned. I mean, the fact that they're able to run off the Iraqi military.
But they keep winning battles where they're undermanned.
And nobody's fighting against them.
Right.
They're
so that's
relatively better trained
But
and
the
have better
silver
morale.
lining here, though, is
And
that
they're throwing people in a ditch and shooting them in the head and putting guys up on a they're crucifying people and decapitating people, and that sends they are literally running a terror campaign that is causing people to run and fight even when they have them outgunned and outmanned.